You know how, in college, you keep telling yourself you're a real adult, when you're actually just a broke kid pretending you've got it together? That was me 4 years ago. I was a junior living off campus in a drafty rental house with 2 other guys, Evan and Caleb. But they both flew home early for the holidays, so I had the place to myself for the week leading up to Christmas. I decided I'd stay in town until the 24th to grab extra shifts at the warehouse where I worked part-time. The plan was simple: make a little money, drive to my parents' place on Christmas Eve, and feel like I wasn't completely wasting my life. Except, being alone in a big, empty house gets depressing fast. To cheer myself up, I bought a real Christmas tree. It was a monster, an 8-foot Douglas fir. I got dirt cheap because it had a bald patch on the back. I dragged it into the living room, feeling proud of myself, until I realized the problem. I didn't have a stand. The plastic stand we had in the basement was cracked, and this tree was heavy. If I let go, it was going to topple over and either smash the window or crush something expensive I didn't own. I checked Amazon. Shipping wouldn't arrive in time. I swung by the hardware store, but the heavy-duty stands were like $60. I had about $40 in my checking account to last me 3 days. So I did what every broke college student does. I went on Craigslist. It was December 23rd. The for sale section was mostly junk. Then I saw it. A post titled, "Vintage Cast Iron Tree Stand, Heavy Duty, 15. The photo showed one of those old-school green metal stands with the red screws, the kind that looks like it could hold up a telephone pole. It was perfect. I texted the number immediately. "Hey, is the stand still available? Can I pick it up tonight?" The reply came 2 minutes later. "Yes, come now. I'm at this address. I'll be up for a bit." I mapped it. The address was in a subdivision called Maple Ridge, about 20 minutes away on the edge of town. Nice area, families, retirees, the kind of neighborhood where people wave at each other. Safe. I texted back, "On my way." I hopped in my beat-up Honda Civic. It was bitterly cold, the kind of cold that stings your cheeks and makes your eyes water. There were a few inches of old, crunchy snow on the ground from a storm earlier in the week. When I turned into Maple Ridge, the vibe got weirdly quiet. Most houses had Christmas lights blazing. Icicle lights, inflatables, wreaths, the whole deal. But as I got closer to the pin on my GPS, the street got darker. The seller's house was the only one on the block, with no decorations, no lights, no wreath, nothing. Even the street lamp near the driveway seemed like it was flickering out, struggling to stay alive. The house was a split level with beige siding, totally dark except for a dim yellow light coming from a back room. I parked on the street and sat there for a second with a pit in my stomach. Not full panic, just that primal instinct that says something's off. I ignored it. It was a $15 stand, and I needed to get the tree up. I walked up the driveway. It hadn't been shoveled. The snow was packed down into ice, like someone had been walking back and forth, but never bothered to clear it. I rang the doorbell. Nothing. I waited, shivering in my thin jacket, and rang again. Finally, the inner door opened. Through the glass storm door, I saw him. He was an older guy, maybe in his late 50s, thick build with broad shoulders. He wore a stained charcoal sweater and heavy glasses that magnified his eyes. He didn't smile, didn't even try. He unlocked the storm door and pushed it open a crack. "For the stand?" he asked. His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it in days. "Yeah," I said, reaching into my pocket. "I've got the money right here." He didn't take it. He stared at me, then looked past me at my car, then back at me, like he was weighing something in his head. "It's in the basement," he said. too heavy for me to carry up with my back. You've got to come down and get it. Now, I'm not a big guy. I'm maybe 5'10" on a good day. He was older, sure, but he was solid. And the way he said it, it wasn't a suggestion. It was a command. "Oh," I said, stepping back without meaning to. Is anyone else home who can help? I don't really want to track snow into your house." "My wife's asleep," he said. He lied. I knew he was lying. The house was dead silent. A smell drifted out through the opening, musty, like old paper and stale cigarettes that had soaked into the walls. "Just take your shoes off," he said. "Come on. I want to make sure it fits your tree before you take it. I've got a trunk down there. We can test it." "It's fine," I said quickly, heart thumping. "Really, I'll take the risk. If it doesn't fit, I'm only out 15. His eyes tightened. "No," he snapped. "You need to see it. Just come in." He opened the door wider and stepped back into the shadowy hallway, gesturing for me to enter like he was letting me into a trap I was supposed to walk into willingly. "I'm actually in a rush," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Tell you what, I'll give you 20. Keep the change. Just bring it here." He stared at me for a long, uncomfortable moment. His eyes looked wet and wired behind the thick lenses, like something in him was running too hot. Finally, he huffed. "Wait here," he muttered. He disappeared into the darkness. I heard heavy footsteps going down wooden stairs. I stayed on the porch, ready to bolt. I kept one hand on the storm door handle so it wouldn't latch shut on me. A minute later, he reappeared, breathing hard, lugging the green metal stand. He dropped it onto the entryway floor with a loud clank. "Here." I handed him the 20 through the crack, in the door. He snatched it. "No thank you. No Merry Christmas. Just that stare." I grabbed the stand. It was heavier than it looked, maybe 20 pounds, and I turned to go. "Hey," he called. I froze and looked back. "You got a nice car," he said. I stared at my rusted Civic like he was making a joke. Thanks." "You live on campus?" he asked. My mouth moved before my brain did. "No." Then I caught myself. Yeah, dorms, across town." He didn't blink. Didn't react like a normal person reacts when someone stumbles over a lie. "Drive safely," he said. I practically jogged to my car, tossed the stand into the passenger seat, and pulled away fast enough that my tires crunched loud over the snow. I watched my mirror until I turned the corner. He was still standing in the doorway watching me leave. By the time I got home, the adrenaline faded and embarrassment took over. It was just a cranky old guy. I'm being dramatic. I carried the stand inside, locked the door, and dragged the tree over onto its side. The stand was vintage, covered in chipped green paint. I started loosening the red screws to make room for the trunk. As I wrestled the stand into place, something rattled, like a loose piece inside one of the hollow legs. Annoyed, I shook it. The noise kept ticking around inside like a tiny secret. I flipped the stand upside down to see if I could shake whatever it was out. No holes. But on the underside of one leg, there was a strip of black electrical tape. It looked new. Frowning, I peeled it back. Inside the hollow leg, jammed tight against the metal, was a small black square. Not scrap, not a broken washer, a device. I used a screwdriver to pry it out. It fell into my palm. A GPS tracker, one of those little tile-style trackers, and the tiny light on it was blinking. My blood went cold. I stood in my living room holding it, staring like my brain couldn't process what my eyes were seeing. Why would a Christmas tree stand have a tracker? You don't lose a tree stand. You don't take it for walks. There was only one reason to put a tracker in something you sell to a stranger: to find out where they live. I panicked. My first instinct was to destroy it. I threw it on the floor and smashed it with my boot heel until the plastic cracked and the battery popped loose. I scooped up the pieces, ran to the bathroom and flushed them. Then I sat on the edge of the tub, breathing hard, mind racing. He knows where I am. Logic tried to wrestle control back. Maybe it was for something else. Maybe he tracked storage bins and forgot. Maybe he reused the tape. It was a stretch, and I knew it. But I didn't want the alternative to be true. I checked every lock, every window. I shoved a chair under the front doorknob, like something out of a bad movie. I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room with a baseball bat, Netflix playing for noise, jumping at every creak the house made. Christmas Eve morning finally came with pale winter daylight, and everything felt less haunted. I told myself I was being paranoid. I finished setting up the tree anyway, though looking at that stand made my stomach churn. Around 10 in the morning, I went into the kitchen to make coffee. The kitchen window looks out over the fenced backyard. I dropped my mug. It shattered, coffee splashing across the floor. The backyard was covered in smooth, untouched snow, except for one set of tracks. Someone had climbed over the back fence. The boot prints were large and heavy. They cut in a straight line from the fence right up to the kitchen window. The snow there was packed down hard, like someone had stood right outside the glass for a while. The tracks didn't go back the way they came. They went around the side of the house toward the street. I called the police immediately. 2 officers came out. I showed them the stand, showed them where the tracker had been, told them about the Craigslist seller and pointed out the prints. They were polite, but dismissive. "Look, kid," the older officer said, "we can file a report for trespassing, but without a real name or a license plate, there's not much we can do." "The guy probably used a burner phone," the other one added. "He put a tracker in the stand," I insisted. "Which you flushed," the older officer pointed out, not unkindly. "So, we don't have that as evidence." I felt helpless. So what do I do? "Keep your doors locked," he said. "If you see him again, call 911. They left. I wasn't going to just sit there. I drove to Best Buy and blew the rest of my money, plus my credit card, on a basic security setup. I bought 3 indoor cameras, one facing the front door, one aimed at the back door, one in the living room angled toward the tree and the hallway. I connected everything to my phone and told myself I'd be ready if he came back. Christmas came and went. Nothing happened. I went to work. I came home. I checked the feeds like a nervous habit. The Craigslist listing disappeared. The number that texted me went dead. By December 28th, I started to loosen up. Maybe the footprints were just someone cutting through yards. Maybe it was all coincidence stacked on top of winter paranoia. That night, my friend Nate called me. "Dude, you've been a hermit," he said. "Come out. Burgers and soda at Liam's, my treat." I hesitated. I didn't want to leave the house, didn't want to admit I was scared, but I also felt like I was losing my mind alone in that place. "Fine," I said, "but I'm not staying out late." I left at 8, double-locked the door, checked the camera feeds, everything clear. For a few hours, I laughed and felt normal again. Around 11:30, I headed home. I pulled into my driveway at 11:50 and my heart stopped. The front door was wide open, not just unlocked, kicked in. The door jamb was splintered, the door hanging, crooked on the top hinge, swaying slightly in the wind like it was breathing. I didn't go inside. I threw the car in reverse, backed out into the street, locked my doors, and called 911 with shaking hands. "Someone broke in," I said to the dispatcher. voice too loud. I'm outside in my car. The police arrived fast, same officers as before. They drew their guns and went in. I sat in my car, trembling so hard, my phone felt like it weighed 100 pounds. After a few minutes, one of them shouted, "House is clear, you can come in." Inside, it looked like a rampage, not a burglary. The Christmas tree was tipped over, ornaments shattered everywhere, couch cushions slashed, TV smashed. "Check your valuables," an officer said. I ran to my room. My laptop was gone. The envelope where I kept emergency cash, around 500, was gone too. "He took my laptop and my cash," I told them. "Standard burglary," the older officer said, writing it down. "Probably saw you leave." "No," I said. "It's him, the tree stand guy." They gave me that tone again, the one that means we'll write it down and nothing will happen. But they were wrong. I had cameras. While they dusted for prints and found nothing, because whoever did it wore gloves, I sat on what was left of my couch and opened the camera app. A motion alert popped up. Living room, 8:45 p.m. 45 minutes after I left. I hit play. The footage was grainy night vision, but clear enough. The front door blew open with a violent crash. A figure stepped inside. It was him. Not Gary or whatever name he'd used. Same stained sweater. A black ski mask rolled up on his forehead, face exposed, leather gloves. And in his right hand, gripped tight, a metal baseball bat. He didn't look at the TV, didn't rummage for valuables. He walked straight into the center of the living room and just stood there, listening, perfectly still. Then he screamed. Not a word, just a raw, guttural roar, like something inside him snapped open. He started swinging the bat, smashing the lamp, the coffee table, anything within reach. And then, this is the part that sticks in my throat, he stopped smashing. He started searching, not for money. He stabbed the bat into the couch cushions, like he was checking if someone was hiding underneath. He walked down the hallway toward my bedroom. I switched camera feeds to the one aimed toward the back door and hallway edge. I couldn't see inside my room, but I could hear audio. The thud of him tearing at my bed, ripping things apart like he was hunting a person. He came back out breathing hard, confused, disappointed. He walked into the living room and stopped in front of the hidden camera on the bookshelf. He didn't notice the lens, but it felt like he looked right through it. "Where are you?" he said. The microphone picked it up clean. He paced for another 10 minutes, waiting, like he expected me to come home. Only when he glanced out the window and saw a neighbor's lights flicker did he seem to decide to leave. On his way out, he grabbed my laptop and the cash almost casually, like he needed to make it look like a robbery. I showed the footage to the police. Their attitude changed instantly. They identified him quickly from the video. His real name wasn't anything he'd told me. It was Darren Holt. He had a record: assault, stalking, breaking, and entering. He'd been released a few months earlier. A warrant went out. They went to the house in Maple Ridge. It was empty. Turns out he didn't own it. It was a foreclosure that had been sitting vacant for years. He'd broken in, changed the locks, and lived there like a squatter. Used the address to bait people from Craigslist. They found a workshop in the basement. Dozens of items, lamps, chairs, tools, tagged with prices like they were ready to be listed. And in the corner, they found a heavy metal chair with zip ties attached to the arms and legs. That was why he wanted me downstairs. If I'd gone into that basement on December 23rd to test the fit, I don't think I would have come back up. They looked for Darren Holt for months. They found his car ditched in a ravine outside of town, but they never found him. I moved out the next day. I dropped out of that college and transferred to a school states away. I couldn't sleep in that town anymore. I still have the video saved. Sometimes, when I can't sleep, I watch him standing in my living room with that bat, whispering, "Where are you?" And every Christmas, when I see people buying random stuff off Craigslist to save a few bucks, I want to grab them by the shoulders and shake them. Save your money. Buy it from a store. Because you never really know who's waiting for you in the basement. I've worked security for about 5 years now. Most people think it's exciting, like you're chasing criminals and tackling shoplifters every day. The truth is the opposite. It's 99% boredom and 1% weirdness, especially on the graveyard shift at a dying mall. This happened last year, the night of December 23rd, bleeding into early Christmas Eve. I was the only guard on duty. The mall, one of those older ones slowly losing business to online shopping, had cut costs hard. They cut the security budget, cut staffing, and worst of all, they stopped paying for cloud storage on the cameras. The cameras still worked. I could see everything live on the office monitors, but nothing recorded. If I didn't see it happen in real time, it basically didn't exist. It was 1:55 in the morning. The mall had been locked down since 10. The cleaning crew had already left. It was just me, a radio nobody listened to, and a couple million square feet of empty retail space. I was sitting in the security office, tucked behind the food court, fighting sleep with lukewarm coffee and staring at a wall of monitors. Malls are creepy at night. In the day, it's noise and light and crowds. At night, the lights are dimmed to save power. Mannequins cast long shadows in the storefronts that look like people standing still. The HVAC groans through the corridors like something breathing behind the walls. I was doing my routine monitor sweep, clicking through feeds. North entrance, clear. Food court, clear. Loading dock, clear. Then I clicked to the center court. Because it was Christmas, the center court was Santa's village. Fake snow, a little wooden cottage, giant candy canes, and a bunch of animatronic elves that paint toys and hammer away all day. At night, the animatronics were off. On the black and white screen, the elves were slumped forward in frozen poses. They looked dead. I was about to switch cameras again when I froze. Someone was sitting in Santa's chair. My heart did that weird flutter thing. I leaned closer. The resolution wasn't great, but it was clear enough. A figure slumped in the big velvet throne, wearing dark clothes, hoodie, baggy pants, not moving, just sitting there, center of the display, facing forward like they were waiting. My first thought was teenagers. It happens. Kids hiding in bathrooms before closing so they can roam around after hours and film videos. I grabbed my radio and my heavy flashlight. I wasn't scared yet, just annoyed. Paperwork on Christmas Eve was the last thing I wanted. "Security to Central," I said into the radio out of habit, even though no one was on the other end. "We've got an intruder in the center court, investigating." I left the office and stepped into the main corridor. The silence hit immediately. If you've never been in a mall alone at 2 in the morning, you don't understand how loud your own footsteps are. Each step bounced off tile and glass, following me like another person. As I got closer, I unclipped pepper spray from my belt. We weren't allowed to carry guns, which always made me feel like the job was a joke right up until it wasn't. I rounded the corner near the escalator. "Hey!" I shouted, sweeping my flashlight beam across the village. "Mall security, you're trespassing." My voice echoed back at me. I aimed the light at the big red chair. It was empty. I stopped walking. A chill crawled up my arms that had nothing to do with the cold air. I knew what I saw. I stared at that monitor for seconds, long enough to be sure. There was someone in that chair. I walked into the display, stepping over fake snow. Up close, the elves looked worse, their painted eyes glossy and fixed. One of them was stuck mid-motion, arm raised like it was about to strike something. I approached the throne. "Is anyone here?" I called out. Silence. Just the low hum of nearby vending machines. I reached out and touched the red velvet seat. It was warm, not hot, but noticeably warmer than the plastic armrests and the cold air. Someone had been sitting there moments ago. "Come out," I shouted, spinning in a slow circle. "I know you're here. The cops are on the way." That was a lie. I hadn't called anyone yet. I searched behind the little wooden cottage, checked behind giant fake presents. Nothing. Then I noticed wet footprints where fake snow met real tile. Dirty smears leading away from the chair, past the elves, toward the employee-only corridors near the south end. I followed them. The footprints faded after a short distance, but the direction was obvious. They were heading toward the maintenance halls. I pushed through the double doors marked "Employees Only." Back there, it's all concrete and dim fluorescent lighting. "Hello," I called. At the end of the hall, the loading bay door was wide open, propped with a brick. Cold wind shoved in, rolling dead leaves across the concrete. I exhaled without realizing I'd been holding my breath. They left. I kicked the brick away and slammed the door shut. I locked it and double-checked the deadbolt. Then I called the mall manager, Ray, on my phone. He answered groggy. "Ray, it's Jordan," I said. "I had an intruder. Saw someone on the monitor sitting in Santa's chair. By the time I got there, they were gone. Found the south loading door propped open." Ray sighed like I'd woken him for a minor inconvenience. "Did they steal anything? Any windows smashed?" "Not that I can tell." "Probably just someone looking for warmth," he said. "Log it. Don't call the cops unless there's damage. I don't want anyone panicking over Christmas." "Okay," I said, even though my gut didn't like it. He told me to do an extra round and hung up. So I did. Bathrooms, changing rooms, corridors, perimeter, everything. The place felt empty. I returned to the office and watched the monitors like a hawk. Every time I glanced at the center court feed, my stomach twisted. But the chair stayed empty. My shift ended at 7. The morning guard, Reese, showed up and I told him what happened. He laughed. "Probably just that old drifter who sneaks in every winter. I'll keep an eye out." I went home exhausted, trying to convince myself it was nothing. I slept a few hours, then got up to head to my parents' place for Christmas Eve dinner. Before that, I swung by the mall to pick up my paycheck. Ray had left it in the office. When I pulled into the parking lot at 3 in the afternoon, my stomach dropped. Police cars were everywhere. At least 4 cruisers and an ambulance out front, lights flashing against the glass doors. Yellow tape blocked the entrance. Shoppers were pressed outside trying to see in. I ran up and spotted Reese talking to an officer. His face was pale, sheet white. "Reese," I said, ducking under the tape. "What's going on?" He stared at me like he was seeing a ghost. "Jordan, dude, you need to talk to them." A detective in a long coat stepped forward. "You're the night guard?" "Yeah," I said. "Did the guy come back?" "Come with me," he said. He led me inside. The mall was closed. The emptiness felt heavier in daylight, like the building was holding its breath. We walked toward the center court. "You reported an intruder around 2 in the morning," the detective said. "You said he fled through the south loading bay." "Yeah," I said. "I saw him in the chair. Then he was gone. Door was open." We reached Santa's village. Evidence markers dotted the floor. Forensics was taking photos near the wooden cottage. And right beside Santa's throne was a black body bag. "We found him about 2 hours ago," the detective said. "A cleaning employee saw a boot sticking out from under the platform the chair sits on." My mouth went dry. He unzipped the bag a few inches. Inside was a man I recognized vaguely, a homeless guy I'd seen panhandling near the highway exit. He looked oddly peaceful, except for the dried blood in his beard. "Stabbed," the detective said flatly. "Multiple times. We found a knife in a trash can near the food court." My brain tried to build a story that made sense. He broke in. I scared him off. Someone else. The detective cut through it. "Based on body temperature and rigor, he's been dead since at least midnight, possibly earlier." I stopped breathing. "Midnight?" I whispered. "That's impossible." "Why?" "Because I saw him," I said, voice cracking. "I saw him sitting in that chair at 2, sitting up." The detective frowned. "Are you sure? Could it have been clothes, shadows?" "No," I said. "It was a person." And then it hit me. If the homeless man had been dead and stuffed under that platform since midnight, then the person I saw in the chair at 2 wasn't him. It was the killer. The killer was sitting in Santa's chair in the dark, right above the body, staring directly into the camera, staring at me. "The cameras," the detective said sharply. "We need the footage." I felt sick. "There isn't any." He stared. "What do you mean there isn't any?" "Live view only," I said. "The owners don't pay for recording." The detective cursed under his breath, furious, for the victim, for the case, for the cheapness that made a murderer invisible. But what haunted me most wasn't just the body. It was the timeline. It took me 3 minutes to get from the office to Santa's village. When I got there, the chair was warm, empty. I found the back door propped open and assumed he ran. But the detective told me later the snow outside that door was clean. No footprints, no signs anyone left through it. So the killer didn't flee when I came down. He opened the door to make me think he fled. And while I was standing in Santa's village, sweeping my flashlight around and shouting for him to come out, he was still inside the mall with me, probably behind the frozen elves, or in a dark corner near the food court, watching me touch the warm chair, watching me lock the door, watching me do my rounds. They never caught him. No DNA, no prints, no footage, just a dead man and a guard who can't look at Santa's throne the same way again. I quit the next day. I work at a toll booth now. It pays less, but at least I can see everyone who comes and goes. People call Christmas the most wonderful time of the year. For me, it's the season when I learned how close danger can sit to you in the dark, quiet, patient, and smiling behind a camera that isn't saving a thing. I know this is going to sound dramatic, but after what happened, I don't think I'll ever look at Christmas Eve the same way again. It was December 24th. My husband, Daniel, is an ER nurse. Accidents don't take a holiday, so he drew the overnight shift. He left around 9 that night. I wasn't thrilled about being alone on Christmas Eve, but we'd done our gifts earlier that morning, and I had our golden retriever, Milo, to keep me company. We lived in a decent-sized house in a quiet suburb. The house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac and backed up against a thin stretch of woods. Great for privacy, terrible when you're home alone and your mind starts inventing shapes in the darkness. After Daniel left, I locked the front door, deadbolt, handle, everything. I checked the sliding back door, double-checked the windows, armed the alarm, and settled on the couch with a soda to watch a movie. Milo curled on the rug, snoring softly. For the first couple hours, everything was normal. The wind howled a little outside, rattling the gutters, but that's winter. At exactly 11:14, my phone buzzed on the coffee table. A notification from the doorbell camera. Person detected at front door. I frowned. We weren't expecting anyone. Too late for deliveries, too late for neighbors dropping off cookies. I paused the movie and opened the app. The feed took a second to load, that little buffering circle spinning. When the image popped up, my stomach dropped. On my porch stood a person dressed like a Christmas caroler, fully committed. Long red Victorian-style coat, top hat, thick scarf wrapped around their face so only their eyes showed. But they weren't singing, they weren't moving. They were just standing there, staring directly into the camera. My first thought was a prank. Teenagers, someone messing around. I waited for them to ring the bell or run away laughing. 10 seconds passed, then 20. They stood perfectly still, like a statue. In the night vision, their eyes looked like two dark holes. I decided to cut it off before it escalated. I pressed the talk button. "Can I help you?" I asked, trying to sound annoyed instead of scared. "It's after 11. Please leave." There was a slight delay as my voice echoed out of the porch speaker. The figure didn't flinch, didn't even tilt their head, just kept staring. It felt like they weren't looking at the camera. It felt like they were looking through it, at me on my couch. "I'm serious," I said, and my voice trembled despite me. "I'm calling the police if you don't leave." Nothing. I closed the app and dialed the non-emergency line, feeling ridiculous. Calling the police because someone was standing on a porch sounded like something a paranoid person does. I was on hold when I heard it. Not from the front, from the kitchen at the back of the house. A tapping, light at first, like a fingernail or ring touching glass. I froze. Milo woke up, immediately, head lifting, ears sharp. The tapping came again, louder. I didn't go into the kitchen. I didn't want to be seen. I opened the security app and switched to the backyard camera view. I almost dropped my phone. There were 3 more of them. They wore dark coats, no scarves. They wore masks, cheap plastic masks, like you'd buy at a party store. Clear faces with exaggerated smiles and rosy cheeks. The night vision made the masks look warped and unreal. 2 stood a few feet back in the snow. The third, a tall, broad man, stood right against the sliding glass door. I watched him reach out and slowly press down on the handle, testing it. Thank God I'd checked the lock. The handle didn't budge. The masked man leaned closer until his plastic forehead rested against the glass. He wasn't staring blindly into the house. He was searching. For me. I hung up the non-emergency call and dialed 911. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. 911, what's your emergency? People are trying to break into my house, I whispered, sliding off the couch and crawling behind the kitchen island so I wouldn't be visible from the back door. There's 1 at the front and 3 at the back. They're wearing masks. Okay, the dispatcher said calmly. Officers are on the way. Are you somewhere safe? I'm hiding, I whispered. Are the doors locked? Yes, but they're testing them. While I was talking, I heard a voice, muffled through the glass, but loud enough to slice through the house. Rachel. My blood turned to ice. They knew my name. Random burglars don't call you by your first name. Milo stood, a low growl rumbling in his chest. The hair on his back rose like a ridge. The voice came again, calm, flat, almost bored. "Open the door, Rachel. We know you're in there. We missed you at the holiday party." My stomach lurched. I worked at a mid-sized logistics company. We'd had our Christmas party 2 nights ago. It was a bland corporate event. Music, drinks, forced smiling. I couldn't think of anyone who would do this. The dispatcher asked, "Do you know them?" They know me," I stammered, tears starting without permission. "They said they missed me at the party." "Stay on the line," she said. "Officers are a few minutes out." Then the sound hit, sharp, violent. A kick against the back door. The whole frame shuddered. "They're kicking the door," I said, voice breaking. "Get to a room with a lock," the dispatcher commanded. "Go now." I scrambled up, grabbed Milo's collar to pull him with me, but he wouldn't move. He stared toward the back door, teeth bared, barking like I'd never heard in my life. Not a warning bark, I will tear you apart bark. Another kick. Wood splintered. The lock started to give. I didn't have time to run upstairs. The only room with a lock on that floor was the small powder room off the hallway. I ran into it and locked the flimsy door behind me. "Milo!" I screamed. "Come here!" He didn't. Then the glass shattered. It was the loudest sound I've ever heard. Sliding door collapsing onto tile. Cold air pouring in like the house had opened its mouth. "Rachel," the voice said again. This time it was inside. "Where are you hiding, Rachel?" I pressed myself into the far corner of the tiny bathroom, clamping a hand over my mouth to stop the sound of my sobbing. The dispatcher was still talking, telling me officers were arriving, but it felt like the intruders were already everywhere. Then Milo's growl turned into a roar, a heavy thud, my 70-pound dog launching himself. A shout, surprised and pained, a chaotic struggle, things breaking, furniture scraping, boots pounding across hardwood, fabric tearing. "Get the dog off," someone yelled. Then another voice, sharp with panic. "Shoot it! Shoot the dog!" My heart stopped. If they had guns, it was over. And then, sirens. Not distant, immediate, right outside. Blue and red light flashed under the bathroom door. "Police! Drop it!" A megaphone boomed from the front yard. The chaos shifted. The intruders weren't advancing anymore. They were running. Footsteps stumbled over broken glass, rushing back toward the yard. "Backyard! He's running to the woods!" an officer shouted from inside my living room. I stayed in the bathroom, shaking so hard I couldn't stand, until a female officer knocked gently. "Rachel, it's Officer Hayes. The house is clear. You can come out." When I opened the door, the first thing I saw was Milo. He was limping slightly, a small cut on his snout, but his tail was wagging like he'd just done his job and wanted praise. I collapsed and hugged him, burying my face in his fur. The living room looked wrecked. Snow blew in through the shattered back door, mixing with glass shards on the floor. There was blood on the carpet. Not Milo's, not mine. The police caught 2 of them in the woods behind the house. The other 2 got away in a car parked a street over. But the ones they caught gave up names quickly once they were in custody. The man who'd spoken to me, the one who kicked the door, was the one Milo had bitten. They found him bleeding badly near the tree line. When they pulled the mask off him, I didn't recognize him at first. But later, at the station, a detective showed me a photo, and something clicked in my brain with a cold, sick certainty. His name was Brandon. He worked in IT at my office. We had never actually spoken, not once. But I remembered him. He was the guy who always seemed to be in the break room when I got coffee, Never said hello, never nodded. Just stood there stirring his drink, watching me over the rim of his mug. I'd brushed it off as awkwardness. When the police searched his apartment, they found a shrine. Photos printed from my social media. Pictures he'd taken of me walking to my car. Notes. Obsessed little details. He'd recruited 3 friends, telling them I was some rich executive who kept cash at home. Just enough of a lie to get them to help. But his goal wasn't money. He told police he just wanted to have Christmas dinner with me. We moved 3 months later. I couldn't sleep in that house anymore. Not with woods behind it, not with glass that could shatter, not with the memory of masks in the snow, and my name spoken softly through a door. Every Christmas Eve, I still double-check the locks. And I still look at Milo like he's the reason I'm here at all.